I got home late that Thursday, flight delay out of Chicago, mechanical issue first, then weather. Typical O'Hare. I sat on the runway for nearly an hour with my forehead pressed to the window, eyes fixed on nothing. I wasn't in the mood to answer emails and I was too drained to pretend I could sleep sitting upright. I just wanted to get home, drop my suitcase, and disappear into my own space for a few hours. When I finally stepped through the front door, the house was still. Not the comforting kind of stillness either, it was quiet in that unfamiliar, slightly hollow way. The air smelled like lavender and something faintly metallic. Clean, but curated. The lights in the entryway were dimmed, soft amber tones bouncing off the walls like a staged set. Leslie had been here, clearly. But the house didn't feel lived in. It felt arranged. I dragged my suitcase through the foyer and left it just inside the hallway. As I passed the kitchen, I noticed a mug in the sink. Lipstick smudge. Not Leslie's usual cup either, it had "Rise Fierce" in curly script across the ceramic. Probably from one of those empowerment retreats she started going to. The ones I used to joke about until it stopped being funny. I went to the bathroom to wash my face. That's when I saw it. Hanging neatly over the drying rack beside the tub was a lace lingerie set. Ivory. Delicate. Way too intricate to be something you'd sleep in or throw on casually. Still had the boutique tag clipped to the strap. A fancy place downtown, Sable and Faye. I remembered walking past it once with Leslie maybe a year ago. She laughed at the window display and said something like, "Yeah, right? Who actually wears that?" But there it was, hanging in our bathroom like it belonged there. And I had never, not once in 5 years, seen her wear anything remotely like that. I reached out and touched the fabric. Soft. High quality. Brand new. "Hey, Les." I called out, keeping my voice neutral. I heard her coming from the bedroom, footsteps unhurried. She turned the corner holding a half-folded cardigan, her expression calm, unreadable. "Yeah?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. I motioned toward the rack. "What's this?" She barely looked before responding. "Oh, that's from my group." She said it like it should have explained everything. "Your group?" "My coaching circle," she added quickly. "The body reclamation series we've been doing. It was an assignment. Kind of symbolic. A few of us went shopping together after our last session." She gave me a soft smile then, like she was reassuring a client, not her husband. "Symbolic lingerie?" I asked, trying to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. She stepped forward, laying the cardigan on the edge of the sink. "It's about empowerment. You don't have to wear it for someone else, it's about feeling confident in your own skin." The facilitator said reclaiming sensual identity is one of the final steps in reintegration work. Reintegration. Coaching circles. Facilitators. This was the new language of Leslie. A language she had started speaking fluently about 6 months ago, right around the time I noticed she began locking her laptop even during short bathroom breaks. Right around the time our couple selfies vanished from her socials, replaced with cryptic quotes and filtered rooftop photos that never featured who she was with. I nodded slowly. "Right? It's part of the process," she added almost too smoothly. "What process is that?" "Personal development. Female wholeness. Boundary freedom." She said it like she was reading off a brochure. And there it was again, that too polished tone, like the words had been chosen ahead of time. Something in the delivery set off a quiet alarm in me. Not blaring. Not enough to start an argument. But enough that I paused. She looked at me for a beat too long, then shifted the conversation. "Did you eat on the flight? You want something now?" I was going to make a turmeric broth. "No, I'm good," I said, still looking at the lace set. "Just tired." She nodded again, as if we'd wrapped things up. "Okay. Well, I'll be in the studio if you need me." And just like that, she turned and walked off, cardigan in hand, bare feet soft against the wood floors. I stood there for a while after she left. Just me, the bathroom, and a piece of lingerie that didn't belong to the version of her I thought I knew. I didn't say anything more that night. I didn't ask why she bought it without mentioning it. I didn't bring up the receipt on the tag. I didn't question why she used a bag from a different store to bring it home, one I found later, crumpled and hidden at the bottom of the kitchen trash under eggshells and a half-used sponge. I just kept it all to myself. Filed it under a growing mental list of things that didn't add up. Later that evening, while brushing my teeth, I noticed a faint perfume I didn't recognize, lighter than her usual scent, sharper. It lingered near the drying rack. When I went to bed, she wasn't beside me. Said she had late journaling to do. Her phone buzzed once, screen lighting up, before she silenced it and tucked it into a drawer. I lay there in the dark, eyes on the ceiling, heartbeat heavy in my chest. My mind started replaying old conversations. Casual moments. Harmless at the time. Like how she said she needed container space to grow. Or when she claimed sharing personal progress online required curated privacy. I had chalked it all up to her newfound passion for coaching work. Growth, I told myself. Growth can be uncomfortable. But growth isn't secretive. It doesn't come with deleted photos or lingerie with boutique tags left to dry in plain sight like it had something to prove. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was angry. Not yet. But because something in me had shifted. That small, internal click you feel when your instincts finally move from quiet nudges to a full-body alert. It wasn't about the lace, not really. It was about what it represented. A decision made without me. A message I wasn't meant to receive. A version of Leslie I hadn't met before and maybe never would have if I hadn't walked into that bathroom when I did. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not really. I lay still beside her, eyes closed, body unmoving, playing the role of someone drifting peacefully toward REM. But my mind wouldn't shut off. It kept circling back to the lace, to the boutique tag, to her almost too casual explanation. My instincts had flared like motion sensors, but I hadn't reacted, just stored the data like a firewall waiting for a breach. It wasn't just the lingerie. It was everything leading up to it. All the little things that had built up over the last few months, things I'd brushed off, rationalized, ignored. Leslie used to leave her laptop open on the kitchen table while she went to water her plants or brew tea. Now, she locked it even if she stepped away for 30 seconds. She said it was habit, part of her digital detox boundaries, something she'd picked up in her group work. And I bought that. Why wouldn't I? She was exploring new tools, new practices. People evolve. But then came the coaching zones, a term she introduced out of nowhere. 3 nights a week, she'd block off 2-hour windows and ask not to be disturbed. Sometimes I'd hear muffled voices behind her office door, one of them hers, the other sometimes male. Once, when I knocked to ask if she wanted dinner, she opened it only a sliver, covering the webcam of her laptop with her hand. "We're in circle," she whispered, annoyed. "Can you give me space?" I had nodded, backed away, told myself not to take it personally. But now, lying there with her back turned to me in bed, I couldn't stop wondering, who was really on those calls? My mind kept reaching backward, combing through memories with the precision of a forensic scan. Her sudden fixation on curated identity, her Instagram bio changing from wife plus designer to multidimensional soul navigating joy. Her profile photo now showed only her, barefoot in a field at dusk. All our couple pictures? Gone. I asked her about it once. She said, "It's not personal, Clark. The algorithm punishes couple content. Individual posts do better in the healing space." Right? The algorithm. She hadn't posted me in nearly 4 months, but she had plenty of stories from liberation retreats and sisterhood circles on rooftops with fairy lights and sangria. I wasn't in those either. But someone was: arms, shoes, silhouettes. Cropped and vague, but unmistakably, not me. At first, I thought maybe she was going through a phase. A rediscovery arc like people sometimes do after hitting 30 and realizing they lost a version of themselves along the way. I tried to support it, hell, I wanted to support it. I'd even gone with her once to a seminar, sat through 2 hours of chakra alignment and vocal release exercises. I felt out of place, but I did it for her. She squeezed my hand afterward and said, "I love that you're open." But she didn't invite me back after that. I remember one particular afternoon a few weeks ago. I offered to drive her to a Saturday zone session downtown because her car was having battery issues. She said no, flat no. Claimed there wouldn't be parking and that the group was moving afterward to a smaller, private location. She was unusually tense when I pressed. "It's not a social thing," she said. "It's an asterisk mate processing. You wouldn't be comfortable." She'd never used that phrase before. An asterisk mate processing. Like emotional boot camp. Or a cover for something else. Even the way she'd started dressing had shifted. Nothing dramatic, but her outfits went from casual loungewear to styled layers, minimal jewelry, and statement shoes. Not flashy, just curated. Controlled. Like she was becoming someone else but hadn't told me who. At the time, I chalked it up to creative growth. She was a designer after all. Change came with the territory. But now, staring up at the ceiling at 3:47 a.m., I couldn't unsee the thread running through it all. There was a version of her life that no longer included me, and she had been building it slowly, methodically, behind locked screens and ambiguous language. I turned to look at her. Her face in sleep was peaceful, even angelic. But I couldn't stop the thought that came next, uninvited and sharp. She's rehearsed for this. That was the part that stuck with me from earlier, the way she explained the lingerie without pause. There had been no flicker of confusion or embarrassment, just a smooth transition from surprise to explanation, like she'd practiced the script. It was too polished, too ready. I closed my eyes and tried to rest, but every minute that passed made me feel like a passenger in my own house. And the worst part? I still wanted to be wrong. The next morning, I watched her make coffee like nothing had changed. She was humming. She never hummed. "Sleep okay?" she asked, not looking up from the French press. "Not really," I said, which was the truth. She nodded like she already knew that. "Travel lag. You're probably running on conference adrenaline. That stuff takes a toll." I almost asked her about the perfume again, about the tag on the lingerie, about what reclaiming sensuality really meant. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I sipped the coffee and pretended to be present. After she left for her coaching pod, yes, that's what she called it now, a pod, I walked into her studio, not to snoop, just to be in the space, try to understand. The air still carried her scent, vanilla and sandalwood, and I stood there staring at her vision board for a long time. It used to have pictures of us, photos from our anniversary in Asheville, little quotes about trust and partnership. Now it was all abstract shapes and self-affirmations. The self is not a sacrifice. Desire is data. You do not owe them your wholeness. I didn't know who them was. Maybe it was me. I sat down at her desk. The laptop was locked, of course. I didn't try to get in. I just sat there, staring at the blinking login screen, feeling like the password wasn't just for the computer. It was for her. A part of her I was no longer allowed to access. Later that night, I found a notebook in her dresser drawer. It wasn't hidden, just tucked away beneath folded scarves. The cover was blank, matte black. Inside, her handwriting filled every line. I only read one page, something near the middle. It didn't mention names, but the tone was unmistakable. There's a clarity that comes after the detachment, like I finally hear my own voice again. The polarity work makes it obvious. I had overfunctioned for too long. He's a good man, but I'm not willing to remain small to keep the peace. I closed the notebook and placed it exactly where I found it. My hands were cold. A good man. That was the phrase that haunted me. It wasn't praise, it was dismissal. The polite obituary of a partnership someone had already decided to walk away from. That night, I didn't pretend to sleep. I sat at my desk instead, staring at a blank Word doc, wondering if this is how it always starts. Not with a bang or a scream, but with small edits, lingering scents, rewritten bios, locked screens. Not with cheating, but with erasure. She was still in the house, but part of her had already left. And now that I was paying attention, I could finally see just how far she'd gone that I don't even remember what triggered it exactly. Maybe it was the way she flinched when I asked to borrow her charger, like she thought I'd reach for her phone instead. Or maybe it was how she suddenly started using the term exit energy when she talked about relationships in abstract. Not ours, of course. She never said that directly, but the language was clinical, almost rehearsed. It sat in my gut like a splinter I couldn't ignore anymore. I told myself I wasn't going to become that guy, the paranoid husband rifling through drawers, checking location history, setting up keyloggers. But suspicion has its own gravity. And once you get pulled in, you start to realize how much you already knew. The access came by accident or maybe habit. A year ago, Leslie had me set up a cloud backup for her old phone, the one she used before she upgraded to a newer model. It was mainly for syncing her design files and some coaching session notes she didn't want to lose. At the time, I logged into the drive from my desktop to help organize everything. I'd forgotten the account was still active. One night, unable to sleep and riding the edge of frustration and guilt, I sat down at my home office desk and opened the drive. I told myself it was a digital spring cleaning, that I was just checking to make sure the auto backup wasn't eating storage space. Harmless, technical, logical, but that's not what it became. The media folder was larger than I remembered. The sync settings had been looser than they should have been, probably a default she never disabled. I clicked through thumbnails one by one, photos from retreats, scanned PDFs of coaching documents, screensh *TS of Pinterest mood boards. All expected. All normal. Until I saw the folder labeled simply Notes, Private. I clicked it. Inside were images, PDFs, and a few short video files. One of the PDFs caught my eye immediately. It was titled, Exit Strategy. I paused, hovered, told myself not to open it. Then I opened it. It was a document outlining a step-by-step personal plan. A breakup flowchart essentially written in bullet points like a self-help exercise. There were phrases like emotional decoupling, phase transparency, and financial autonomy checkpoint. It was organized, professional, polished. At first, I wasn't even sure it was about me. Until I hit the section titled, Clark, Residual Emotional Risk. Manage Narrative. Do not over-explain. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding so loud I thought it might crack my ribs. My name. My role. Defined like I was a variable in someone else's simulation. My hands were cold, but I kept scrolling. There were photos. Dozens. Most were innocuous, candids from workshops, dinners, smiling selfies with blurred backgrounds. But 3 stood out. The first showed her in a hotel bathroom mirror. She wore the cream-colored lace set. Same one from our drying rack. No context. Just her, posed, eyes slightly off camera, mouth set in an expression that wasn't playful or seductive. It was clinical. Like documentation. The second photo wasn't of her at all. It was of a hotel room bed. Unmade. Dimly lit. A wine glass on the nightstand. A blazer on the chair, definitely not hers. The third image made everything fall into place. It wasn't a full face, just an arm. But I recognized it instantly. The sleeve tattoo, the beaded bracelet, the jagged scar above the wrist. Troy. There's no mistaking him. I'd hired him 2 years ago as a DevOps specialist, smart guy, charming in that frat boy gone corporate kind of way. He had a thing for talking over people in meetings, especially women. Leslie met him once at an office holiday mixer. I remember her laughing at something he said, hand brushing his shoulder like it was nothing. Back then, I told myself not to overthink it. That was before I had to fire him. He'd been caught accessing restricted parts of our financial systems without authorization. Claimed it was a mistake, some audit project no one approved. The real reason? He was pulling metadata from our vendor logs, trying to poach client info. I let him go quietly to avoid a mess. He smiled all the way out the door. And now here he was back in my life without stepping foot in my house. A fourth file was a video 10 seconds long. Shaky footage of a city skyline. Nashville. Taken from a hotel balcony, judging by the angle. Her voice was in the background, faint but familiar. You can't keep filming me, she says, laughing. Seriously. A male voice, his, says, you look good in this light. Then the video ends. I stared at the screen, throat tight, vision blurring just slightly around the edges. Not because of rage, though it was there, smoldering quietly, but because this was no longer suspicion. No longer theory. This was confirmation. Undeniable. Cold. She hadn't drifted. She had defected. And she hadn't done it impulsively. This wasn't an emotional breakdown or some raw, confused phase. She had mapped it out step by step. With bullet points. With labels. With deliberate care. I sat in the dark for what felt like an hour. My reflection hovered in the screen's glare, hollow-eyed and still. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't smash anything, though my hands itched with the desire to destroy. Instead, I did what I always do. I made a copy. I pulled a fresh USB from my drawer, one I used for secure builds, and began transferring files. I labeled everything clearly, file _A, file _B, file _C. I zipped the folder, encrypted it, and backed it up to a second drive hidden behind the false bottom of my drawer. Evidence. Then I shut everything down. Logged out of her cloud. Cleared my history. Left nothing out of place. When I finally got up, my body felt disconnected, like my limbs were moving out of obligation, not intention. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stared at the faucet as if it might say something. She came home 2 hours later. I could hear her coming before she reached the door, heels clicking against the walkway, keys jangling, a giggle trailing behind her like perfume. When she stepped inside, she was on the phone. No, he's asleep, she whispered, though I wasn't. I'll call you later. She caught sight of me in the living room and paused. You're up, she said, smiling. Couldn't sleep, I replied. She gave me a look like she wanted to say more, maybe even ask questions, but then she just nodded and walked past me toward the bedroom. I watched her go. I didn't speak another word that night, but I knew something now that I hadn't known before. The betrayal wasn't emotional erosion. It wasn't circumstantial. It was strategic. And it had a face, a motive, and a plan that I didn't confront her. I didn't rage, accuse, or even hint. There was a strange clarity that came once the truth was undeniable, a kind of stillness I hadn't felt in weeks. The chaos inside me quieted. Not because I felt better, but because the game had changed. She had built something behind my back, piece by piece. Now it was my turn. That same night, after she slipped into bed, after I made sure she was asleep, I pulled the USB out of its hidden spot and sealed it in an envelope. I wrote nothing on it. Just tucked it inside a folder and placed it in my work briefcase, buried between sheets of conference notes from Chicago. Then I opened a blank document and started drafting what I now thought of as my own exit strategy. The first step wasn't dramatic. It was preparation. I opened a new bank account at a small credit union across town, one she'd never think to check. I transferred only what I needed incrementally over the next week. Just enough to handle a transition: first month's rent, security deposit, groceries, legal retainers, a few discretionary charges. The rest I left untouched for now. Moving too fast would draw attention. This needed precision. Then I started scouting places. I told Leslie I was working late, tying up new vendor contracts, running analytics on my team's project backlog. She nodded absently every time, barely listening. She had no idea I was walking through apartments in Brenville, reviewing lease agreements, and asking landlords about soundproofing. The one I chose sat on the third floor of a modern low-rise, fully furnished, turnkey, no personal ties. The kind of place that looked like it belonged to someone else, which was exactly the point. I signed a 6-month lease, paid the deposit, and picked up the keys on a Wednesday afternoon while she was out at a co-facilitator deep dive. I didn't move in right away. I left it empty. Quiet. A safe house. I also retained a family law attorney. Not one of those high-rise types that specialize in courtroom theatrics. No, I went for a boutique firm run by a woman named Elaine, sharp, discreet, and deeply versed in tech-adjacent marital cases. She didn't flinch when I laid out the evidence. She skimmed the folder slowly, nodding at key sections. "Do you want to go scorched earth?" she asked, folding her hands together. "No," I said. "Just clean. Precise. Undeniable." She smiled. "Good. That's harder but far more effective." Together, we crafted the initial draft of the divorce filing. Irreconcilable differences was the official reason. Attached were my digital exhibits, PDFs of the plan, **TS of messages, metadata on the photos, and the synced timeline of her location history. We didn't send it yet. Not until I was ready. That Friday, I asked Leslie when her next weekend retreat was. She told me she had a 2-day immersion, upstate deep nature work, off-grid. She asked if I wanted to go away that weekend too, maybe use the time for solo decompression. I smiled. That sounds perfect. She left early Saturday morning, long dress flowing, headphones in, a canvas backpack over her shoulder like a modern pilgrim. The moment her car left the driveway, I opened the garage and pulled out a box I had stashed weeks ago, essentials only. Laptop, passport, a small bag of clothes, toiletries. I loaded the car, drove to Brenville, and unlocked the door to the apartment that now carried my name alone. There was no ceremony to it. No rush of liberation. Just the quiet click of a lock sliding into place and the subtle exhale of air that had been trapped in my chest for far too long. I plugged in my phone, made one call to Elaine, and said the words I'd rehearsed for days. "Serve her Monday." She didn't hesitate. "It's done." After that, I went to a coffee shop around the corner. Sat at a table by the window. Opened my laptop. And typed out a 2-page cover letter addressed to Leslie. It wasn't a rant. It wasn't venom. It was documentation. A quiet, focused summary of what I'd found. Timeline, details, acknowledgments. I ended it with a single paragraph that I still remember verbatim. "There's no value in asking why. You made your decisions and now I've made mine. This isn't revenge. It's not even resentment. It's closure, the kind you never offered me. By the time you read this, I will be gone. Please don't contact me. Your explanations are not required." I printed it. Slid it into a folder along with the divorce filing and the USB. I drove back to the house that evening. Quiet street. Sunset bleeding across the roof lines. I didn't take anything from her. Didn't touch her studio, her books, or the little tokens she left in every corner of our life. I placed the folder on the kitchen table. Nothing else. I checked the security system on the way out. Locked the door. Paused on the porch for just a second. Then walked away. By the time she came home, I would be a ghost. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. Missed calls. Texts. A voicemail from a number I didn't recognize, probably one of her coaching friends. I ignored them all. Let the digital noise pile up like static behind glass. By noon, she had started emailing. The first message was sterile. "Clark, I received your materials. This is not how I expected things to unfold. I'd prefer to speak about this privately." 2 hours later, another one. You misunderstood. The documents you found were part of a group exercise. Not literal. Not about you. We were exploring narrative duality and shadow work. That one made me laugh out loud bitterly. Then came the voice memo. 37 seconds of her trying not to cry. She didn't deny Troy. Didn't say his name. But she talked about confusion and pressure from external sources. She said things like, I got caught in something bigger than myself and I needed something that made me feel alive again. I deleted it. She texted again that night. I came home expecting you'd be here. Please. I don't want to lose you like this. But she already had. Every joint account had been closed by then. Her access revoked. I had filed change of address forms, rerouted my mail, updated my emergency contacts. I even switched to a new primary physician just to sever that final invisible link. The next morning, she tried a different tactic. She sent a quote from some spiritual influencer she followed. We repeat what we don't repair. No context. No follow-up. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I blocked her number. By Tuesday, I was living a different life. The apartment was sterile, sure, hotel-grade furniture, blank walls, but it was honest. Every object in the space was mine by choice. Nothing hidden. Nothing borrowed. Nothing laced with someone else's narrative. I didn't feel triumphant, but I felt clear. For the first time in a long time, I knew who I was. Not a man unraveling. Not a man begging for clarity. Just a man who had chosen to leave before he became someone he couldn't respect. The first message came through email at 8:03 a.m. on Monday, barely an hour after her calendar app would have reminded her she was supposed to be on a group coaching call. Instead, she was reading the divorce packet I left on the kitchen table. Clark, I'm not sure what this is meant to communicate. You've misunderstood. You're acting from a place of trauma response, and I don't think that's fair to either of us. Can we please talk? I read it while sitting in the corner booth of a nearly empty cafe in Brenville, stirring cream into my coffee. I didn't reply. An hour later came the second email. If this is about the PDF, it was a journaling assignment. I can't believe you're taking it as literal. The facilitator told us to imagine every possible path of freedom, not to act on it. You're making a story out of scattered ideas. Again, no mention of Troy. No acknowledgement of the photos. No apology. Just semantic wrangling. The kind of language designed to reframe, redirect, blur. I closed my laptop and left the cafe without answering. That evening, I received 3 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. Then a message, Clark, it's Mia. I'm just trying to help. She's really not well right now. Can you at least agree to a conversation? Mia. One of her pod circle friends. The one who always posted vague Instagram captions about breaking ancestral patterns and freedom from the matrix of marriage. I had met her twice. She talked like a TED Talk and looked at me like I was a distraction Leslie hadn't transcended yet. I didn't respond. By the next morning, Leslie's tone had shifted. I understand your need to process. I just wish you'd done it with me instead of disappearing. You blindsided me, Clark. After everything we built together, you think I'm not worth a conversation? Still no denial. Still no mention of Troy. Just performance. But what got me wasn't the message. It was the way she added a quote at the end, something I recognized from her workshop slides. Sometimes rupture is the birthplace of evolution. I almost laughed. She'd gone from damage control to rebranding. By Wednesday, the escalation had started. A certified letter arrived at my Brentville address. I opened it cautiously, half expecting legal threats. Instead, it was a printed copy of her response draft. Not for court, just her version of events. A personal statement. It read like a monologue. A blend of apology, poetry, and revisionism. The body keeps the score, and mine had been whispering for years. I never meant to hurt Clark. I loved him, I still do, but I began living in a shell. I shrunk myself to be digestible. When I met someone who reflected a different version of me, I felt like I had found breath again. I wasn't trying to betray him. I was trying to survive myself. Survive herself. That's what she called it. There were no direct lies in her letter. Just omissions. Half-truths. Strategic softening. She called what Troy and her shared a misaligned mirror. She said it ended before the line of betrayal was crossed. I read that part twice. Because I had photos. Files. Timestamps. I knew exactly what it crossed. And when. Still, I said nothing. Sent nothing. Gave nothing back. She tried once more the next day, this time by proxy. My phone buzzed with a new number. A voicemail. Clark, it's Jenna. You probably don't remember me, we met briefly at the Ashford Tech Conference? I was one of the facilitators. Leslie's been trying to get a message to you. She's in a very different emotional space now and she realizes how her approach might have been harmful. She's not asking for forgiveness. Just a humane closure. Please consider reaching out. Even if it's just a text. So now she had her conference contacts doing outreach. I blocked the number. That night, I walked through my new apartment, shutting off lights, tidying up the kitchen, folding back the bed sheets, small motions that reminded me I had agency. That this space wasn't haunted. Meanwhile, she was still living in the house. Still trying to rewrite the ending. She left 2 envelopes in the mailbox that week, one addressed by hand, one printed from a template. Both full of reflections. Both asking to renegotiate the rupture. I didn't touch them. I handed them to Elaine and said, if this becomes legal noise, respond once and shut it down. Elaine nodded, unfazed. This is common, she said. People like her don't expect silence. They expect a scene. They prep for a battle, not for being ignored. On Friday night, the front desk at my apartment called. Sir, someone tried to leave a package for you. A personal item. We didn't sign for it, it looked unofficial. I asked what it was. A box. Tied with string. No shipping label. Just your name. I told them to toss it. I didn't need to open a box to know what was inside. I already knew Leslie's playbook. It would be symbolic. A candle from our trip to Asheville. A photo strip from that photo booth in Maine. Her copy of Letters to a Young Poet with a sticky note on page 43. She always thought healing could be designed. But I was done being a project. By Sunday, she escalated again, this time by calling my parents. They didn't pick up, but she left a voicemail for my mother. It was exactly what I expected. Emotional, vague, full of nostalgia. She said she didn't want to lose the family, that she was still hoping for repair. My mom called me that evening, her voice low and unsure. I didn't respond, she said. I figured you'd want space. I do, I said. And I want you to have it too. Leslie had always been strategic. Her manipulation didn't look like chaos, it looked like structure. Emotional choreography. But this wasn't about her anymore. It was about the boundary between who I had been and who I refused to be again. The next time she tried to reach me, it wasn't a message. It was her. In person. She showed up at my office building the following Tuesday, just after 4 p.m. Security called my extension, said there was a woman downstairs asking to deliver legal documents. I knew it wasn't true, but I came down anyway, curiosity maybe. Or closure. She stood in the lobby wearing all white. Hair pulled back, minimal makeup, clutching a slim folder like it was sacred. Clark, she said softly when I stepped off the elevator. I didn't respond. Just stood there, watching her. I'm not here to beg, she said. I know that doesn't matter to you. I needed you to see the full picture. She held out the folder. Inside were bank statements, therapy invoices, and a typed letter with the subject line, clarification. She launched into her defense, how Troy had used her vulnerability, how her group failed to spot predatory dynamics, how she had been lost in a feedback loop of faux empowerment. Her eyes welled up. Her voice cracked in all the right places. She didn't lie, not directly. She just reframed, repackaged, and reappeared. But I said nothing. Because I'd already said everything I needed to. Because silence, in the end, is the loudest truth. After a minute, she lowered the folder. Her face faltered. Something flickered in her expression, something like recognition. You're really done, she whispered. I nodded once. She left without another word. And I watched her go, the door closing behind her like the final punctuation in a sentence I no longer needed to read.